How you guys doing? I was just obviously on YouTube, as you do, and the main man, Boss Nasty, dropped Is Noir TA 2.0, and I'm honestly gonna just watch the whole video. This is raw, uncut first impressions. You can see I went to start watching it. I was like, nah, this should be a video because obviously I've been in TA. So it'd be interesting to hear the perspective of this video and obviously give my impressions from being back in, obviously, TA back in the day. And let's just go into it, right? So a big shout out to the main man, right? This is Boss Nasty again. Shout out to him. His link of the video will be down below as well. So just hit the thumbs up like I'm doing. Support your content creators here. So let's just dive in. Let's see what he has to say. Hopefully the volume is good and it's going to be an interesting one, right?
Yo, what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. And in today's video, we are going to be touching on some big stuff. A couple of the things, starting with, we're going to talk about super alliances and matchmaking and how some of them could be seeing some action, some of them may not see some action. Why is this?
You know what I'm going to do?
Two, is Noir the
speed it up by 1.25.
2.0? And will they pop?
Get it a little bit quicker. Get us through the points, you know?
As a balloon that gets too much air and then explodes. 3, we're going to show you some history that kind of explains some of this. And then 4, why is it that big alliances, top strong alliances, do not come out and fight at certain points throughout a season? And talking about if they could and have the capabilities to do so, why is there a choice on, oh, well, we'll fight here, but not here, or we'll only fight for a little bit here, and we'll fight for a lot more over there? And so we're going to talk about a lot of these things. And this is actually all really stemming from a conversation.
I'm guessing, before we carry on, this is going into, obviously, speaking about Noir, and obviously in the situation with Noir and EIS, I believe, and for some reason there was no fighting between them. And everyone expected fireworks from the get-go, and there's not been nothing since. So it's going to be interesting to see where this leads to, because obviously it is tailored towards there. So let's see where he goes with it. Let him cook,
we were
right?
talking about a couple days ago in the COD VC on the official Discord, and it really got me thinking about a lot of these things. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of go down this historical rabbit hole and then also talk about how this is really impacting some of the things currently. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up because it helps out a lot. So let's first start off.
I love how he does his own sound effects.
Providing some history here, because I want to start off with this like whole Noir is like the TA 2.0 resurgence, if you will. Now, let me give you a brief history lesson here on TA. So TA, known as the Avengers, started off in season 2. Excuse me, Kingdom 2. I was going to say server, but in Kingdom 2. And if we go, I'll just do it this way, and we'll do boom. Right, so they started off in Kingdom 2 once upon a time. Now, I actually was doing a test project at this time, which was really just one alliance. We just wanted to go in. We wanted just to play throughout a season and just kind of see what everything offered, right? The idea really wasn't to stay and play there for, ever and keep playing those as main accounts. It was just, hey, let's go in as an alliance and let's just kind of see what the game has to offer and figure some things out for our eventual project that we ended up doing on 65. And so we actually ended up landing in Nivola, pretty much, I think, on like the eastern half or eastern third of this area. Now, there were some other alliances at the time where where Burning Lands, this area was kind of split in half. It's been adjusted now, but back in the day, you actually had a ridge here that split between
back
the
in the day.
And
he's not wrong. Back in the day, Burning Lands used to be split guys down here instead of all the way over here, and it was a lot different to how it is now. I wonder how much he's going to go into. I know obviously the history better. I'm surprised it didn't come to me, to be honest, when he asked, about the history of the TA side, because I pretty much know all of it since I was there. And I did a whole video about them. So the basic grisps of it, we'll see where he goes. But basically, TA wasn't an alliance until the end of the very first season. So during season 1 of the game, servers 1 and 2 were doing their own thing, kind of fighting away. But there was 2 alliances, one in server 1, one in server 2, and they start speaking to each other about migrating together, becoming TA and TM later down the line, wants to get more members. And that's kind of like how TA did realistically get created. And it was just through communications of 2 alliances. One, I think, was Burn back in the day. I forgot what the other one was named back then.
It was kind of like this really tall mountain, kind of like the North Wall, if you will, in Game of Thrones. And it kind of split.
So we'll see where he says.
And so you had 2 areas here that you were able to kind of work your way over from to Nivola, and then you had, you know, the Darland, the Forgotten Lands, Zolan, Burning Lands was actually a little bit more here to the right, and Frostia was a little bit more down here. Oh, I'm sorry. There was another area, and I'm forgetting what. Kaltia. That's what it was. So it was Kaltia here, and then it was Burning Lands over here. So it was like Kaltia, Frostia, Nivola, Darland, Forgotten Lands, Zolan, Burning Lands. And so back in the day, you actually ended up having groups like GRZ, OWU, or OWO, and a number of others that started off in Season 2. Or sorry, Server 2. And this was before TA ever existed. Now, TA was really members from a couple different alliances back in Kingdom 2.
Yeah.
And they eventually...
But that's what I mean. He just said Kingdom 2. It's not, though. It's Kingdom 2 and Kingdom 1. That's what I think is... Let's see.
Formed TA, which ended up actually moving because there was some fighting that was happening in...
Yeah, no, that's not correct.
Lands or Kaltia at the time. And... some of the members ended up kind of losing this Zone 1 fight, and they moved over to Zoland. So TA gets formed, and then at this point, this is where someone like Junie, for those of you, let me see if I could show you this real quick from my top stats on players.
Oh yeah, the old Junie, dude. So this is better. So when we're looking at stuff like this, it's King we're looking at. So King is one of the other alliances back then, and he's wrote them down as TA now, but before they weren't named TA, they were called Burn. So you had Burn, which had Junie in. You had more of the, I would say, the Asian side, if I remember correctly, from the TA department. And then in Kingdom 1, you had the other boys, which was Ghost, and you had Wayne, as you can see later down on his list and stuff. You had all these other guys. And basically what ended up happening is, in Kingdom 2, the Burn Alliance did lose their war or something to do. I don't know, there was some drama involved. I'm not going fully into it. But they spoke to King, and basically King and Burn merged together in the next season when it became servers 1, 2, 3, and 4 all together, and it became TA. So at the end of the very first season, that's when they rebranded to TA, ready for the migration, just to give you guys some actual a bit more accuracy. But we'll see where it talks. This is some good. Boy, this is bringing memories back, bro. Ghost, I'm just letting you guys know. Ghost, big close friend to this day. We still talk about different games and we just catch up together. He was the original, guys. Ghost is the original T5 guy, the first proper T5 who maxed every commander out. He was unbeatable. He was unbeatable. That's why people really honestly respected Ghost, the original Ghost, not a guy who's running Ghosts to count down, because it's not the same guy, as you guys know from my own video.
Mao was another top player in Kingdom 2, Immortal from EMP, David from PKO2. Right, these were some of the big guys back then. And Junie was really the first player to supposedly hit T5, was the strongest person in the game.
No, it wasn't. It was Ghost who hit T5
eventually
first.
What ended up happening here is...
So the thing is, I don't know if this is true, that the thing with Junie's account, people assumed he wasn't a real player. And this is a conspiracy. I'm just saying this now because I've got no evidence to support this claim. But a lot of people assumed Junie originally was some sort of developer account. It was someone who was there on purpose, maxed out all the heroes because they needed an account to test, right? But I don't know if that's true or not. But Ghost,
and Alliance,
from what I remember, Ghost was the original first T5, the actual first proper T5 who hit T5 first, got all the heroes maxed first, and basically was the main backbone for garrisoning and rallying when it came to
OWO, EMP,
PvP. Let's just say that.
They decided, you know what, we need, mainly it was EMP who started this, right, where they really started like working. This was back when you could region hop just by
this was some good times,
attacking the pass, building in, stopping, removing the CF, placing the CF here, right? So you would basically just like keep CF hopping or rebuilding, if you will, at passes and gates, and then you would just take, rebuild, take. And so they actually started working their way all in. A number of alliances kind of along the way fell under their kind of attack, if you will, when there obviously was different ways to go about it at the time, but our alliance was one of them, where we ended up kind of getting coming under fire, where they could have easily just kind of
talking about his Kingdom 2 before the all merged.
So we can apply some pressure on them and try to kind of stomp them out before Zone 2 opens and before Zone 3. Sadly, it didn't end up working, and they really weren't able to finish them off there. So TA ends up working their way into a Goru, and they end up basically battling it out at the passes between a Goru
Yeah,
and
that
Atherin, where
that
eventually
was a
over
really
period of
good
time, they
fight on
get through,
Kingdom
and they
2
take
back
over
in the
Atherin,
day.
and they kind of stomp everyone out, and it just kind of ends up being them in Zone 3 for a while, and they kind of take the W that season. And this is all to say that eventually, after this happened, the next number of KVKs that they ended up playing, right, the next massive one that ended up happening was actually between them. It was the first 4 servers, I believe, first 4 or 6 servers at the time. And one of the strongest alliances back then was King. And this was from server 1. So if we go back to alliances, you'll see King here as, at the time, they were the strongest alliance currently. And you can see at the time, this was back, well...
Yeah, man, that is crazy. Look at that. Do you know what's crazy? You see the PSO4 boys back here? That was my alliance. Yep. Back in the day, that was my alliance. I ran with a bunch of people before I gave up and just focused on content, as well as Escapia EXP. Boy, that is memories there. Honestly, that is memories back in the day when we used to have that. But yeah, this was Kingdom 1, and what he's talking about is Kingdom 1 and 2, the merge, like I've been speaking about. So basically what happens, like I say, King merges into TA. These guys are in communications about this. There's screenshots about it and all sorts.
Almost 2 years ago now, right? You can see all the kingdoms from Kingdom 2, right? It was DWD, it was 1V.
If you want, listen, I'm going to be honest. I actually have a video called The History of TA. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to re-release it. I could re-release this video. It'll explain kind of... Or I could put it... You know what? I'll put it in the timestamps. If you want to watch it, boom. It's an old video. It's not really on my channel anymore, because obviously I don't associate with TA really anymore. But it explains the whole history of them, when we used to fight, how they became who they were, all the fights they had to go through and stuff. It's a good video if you really want to watch something like that.
Alliance at the time, PKO2, and then you had TA, right? So they were kind of on their way up at this point. You could see that, right? They were the 3rd strongest alliance behind OWO and EMP. But Kingdom 1 at the time had some of the strongest alliances. And so when they ended up going in, the idea was like, okay, well, this is going to be like, because these were the alliances that went in, right? So you look at 11-9, and the 11-9 over here to, I think, 12-9. We did 11-9, 11-29, right? So these were some of the groups.
It's crazy.
SOS1.
Do you know what's crazy as well? A bit off topic. If you watch the power, so this is what was funny, because during this time, this stuff happened, and server 3 and 4 became a thing, like a proper, server. And while we were powering up, servers 1 and 2 were in like a merge, and they were fighting and stuff. And you can see when you watch the graphs, like the position. So like you watch POS 4, we're rank 13, right? And then like you see POS 2 is rank 13, but our main alliance became rank 5.
Sorry, I think this was afterwards, right? Because keep in mind, King was...
It's crazy. We just grew in power, because we basically... Our original server 4 was like a unified server compared to server 1 and 2, which we noticed had wars going on and people fighting each other, which was kind of good. It was the fact that, the first ever unified server was server 4. So it was kind of a good achievement,
when they ended up going into that first KVK. And what ended up happening was you had TA and King that basically fought in Forgotten Lands. And King, I think, was in Zolan. TA was up here in Darlan. Again, it might have been named something else at the time, because this was the first iteration.
Yeah, they were called
the map.
Yeah.
And so they ended up... King came up from the north. TA came down from the south, down from the north, out from the south. I said the opposite. And they basically fought around the middle of Forgotten Lands. Now they ended up fighting, I believe, a couple days at the most. And in short, TA ended up taking the W there, and they actually assimilated a number of King people.
Stay hydrated.
You may
stay hydrated.
Someone like Ghost, who actually was the lead for King, is now the lead for NA, which is the Nova Avengers, right? This is where they did that merge with NK and MW, for those of you that remember TA did and TM. And so Ghost used to be the king for the king for the King Alliance, the top alliance in server 1, coincidentally called King. And so they ended up doing a merge or joining, and then Ghost ended up again kind of leading NA, at least it's still in the...
So this is a big error. big error. So this is where you need the real history of the TA guys, because Ghost, the name Ghost, yes, is leading NA. That is true, but that is not Ghost, guys. That's someone else. We already know who it is. I'm not gonna expose him again for who it is, but we know who this guy is. It's not Ghost. But the original Ghost did lead back in the day. He led TA through server like 2 in the merge technically, and then when they went against servers 1, 2, 3, and 4, Ghost led then. He also led the next migration after when servers 5 and 6 joined in, and then he also led, I think, one last time, unfortunately, and that was the season after. I mean, after that season, he couldn't keep playing just because of, you know, personal reasons, which is fair enough, right? Everyone has their own reasons why they can't keep playing. However, his account did. His account kept playing. So that's just like a little gist of there. So let's see where he keeps going
today. And so that just kind of gives you a little history lesson there, right, on kind of how that happened. Now, over the seasons, TA has kind of always taken these advantageous matchups for the most part.
And that's true, yeah. And also one thing he missed out as well in the history, TA had internal problems. So if you guys remember, I posted the video, right? I posted the drama. The video got removed because of one of the guys, because he was salty that I, you know, actually pulled his ego to one side and just, you know, said, look at what your morals were. You know, we had that video out, and then the thing is, they had internal problems at the time. And at the end of the season, or the end of the next season, the TA as we knew it disbanded. They literally disbanded. TA and TM went their separate ways. You had TA that changed their name to something else, and that still, I think, had Raven inside. I believe Kagan was inside and someone else. So I do apologize for messing that bit side up. But you did have, obviously, the main TM boys, which you would call Ghost, or Wayne was there, you know, and vice versa. So the leadership separated, the actual council and the formation of TA split, and what became, and I think Hulkston stayed with Ghost and Wayne and all those guys, right? They became NA, as you guys now know. So that's kind of, I think, a little bit of a correction on Boss Nasty's side. So again, I would have loved if he came to me, man. If you're watching this video, BN, come to me next time you're making a video, because honestly, I could have helped you with the actual history properly, man.
Because of that, they've never really lost, right? They've never really had what you would say is kind of a true challenge, right? A true testament of their fights, of battles, right?
And that's kind of true apart from one season. I will highly fucking disagree with, guys. So the thing with TA, and I noticed this when we were playing, we did get, honestly, when it came to allying, and allied really, really well. Meaning, generally, TA always got the second strongest alliance, because generally, back then, and this was the honest truth, back then with TA, if you went against them, or you was matched made against them, you tried all costs trying to ally with them, because you knew if you allied with them, you was with the strongest kingdom at the time, and it was a guaranteed win. It was kind of a sad truth, but that's kind of how it worked. So it always made the matchmaking's very lopsided. But there was one season I highly disagree with, and this was my favorite season to date, and it's still on my channel. And maybe if you want, I'll make a video on it, because it was what I would call the glory times, the golden times of Call of Dragons, because it was crazy what you could do back then, man. But it was us as TA and TM, and we was against the entirety of server 4, server 5, and server 6. And this was honestly the greatest war I've ever been a part of, because it was very balanced. The war went on for weeks until it was over, and when it was over, it finished. You know what I mean? But it went on constantly, guys, for weeks and weeks. And this war between server, you know, TA versus servers 4, 5, and 6 is where we met some of the players we know today, right? Duz, who runs BDO. We met him back here, boys. So we are very, very old, long-time friends. And so is so many other players we've met on this journey playing Call of Dragons. And honestly, that was one of the greatest wars ever, because it was so crazy how many people was playing all at once, and we're all fighting 24/7. So I kind of agree with the majority with what he's saying, but there was honestly this one season which was crazy to play in.
Here. So if we
let's see where carry on.
This is an old video I did when we were talking about SSS 1-8, right? This is kind of TA. TM going up against GRZ and a few others. And I'm just going to mute this for a sec as we go through. You can see GOAT here is one alliance. They're at 2.3 billion. We look at GRZ 2.35 or 2.4. TM was 3.4. This is Wayne. Now, TA was a little bit stronger from what I remember. I accidentally clicked on TM a second time and I forgot to click on TM.
Yeah, because TM, so back here, TM originally was the main fighter show. So we had, I would say the main fighters were all in here. However, in TA was still a lot of the main fighters, but I believe it was more of the Asian time zone. So that was kind of the beauty of it. Like, TM kind of covered like the EU and NA guys, while the TA covered all the Asian side. So it was kind of the best of both worlds with TA and TM. It's kind of thing how people wanted to operate their kingdoms right now.
Pretty much about similar power, but I believe TA was a little bit stronger. So, you probably have about a 2 billion, 2.5 billion lead on this matchup here, which back then, when these were the power levels, that's pretty significant. Let's also look at another situation where we get to SS2, right? So now we're in, I think, the second 1+ or 1++, before it got, or no, sorry, this is season 2, I think, right? So this is when season 2 started, and you can see the matchup here, right, which was TA, TM, EXG, EXXL, Sky UDF going up against GG83, GG 066.
I remember this one because this was when the over drama kicked off, right? This is when my drama video came, and this is when I officially quit TA because of the fucking corruption that was in the leadership back then. But again, it's all switched. It's all changed now. It's not the same, alliance as it was once.
It's a 14.3.
We remember this bit.
Billion power differential, right? So keep in mind, right now, obviously there's some intricacies here, I'm sure, in how the match was played out, but I'm just kind of showing you at face value how some of the powers ended up working to where, again, another favorable matchup. Let's go to the next one, where we ended up seeing TATM. They were going up against NKNW, right? But however, keep in mind the plan here was already to have NK and MW merge with TA and TM, which is, again, how we ended up getting NA that we have now with the Nova Avengers, because NK and MW were Nova, right? I think it was like Nova Knights, Nova Warriors, or something like that, if I recall correctly. And so you almost kind of have like this season being done, right? Bakar and GGKM, which again, were strong alliances, right? Didn't really have anything, didn't really make it into Zone 3, and even though they had some skirmishes here and there, right, in TATM and NKW didn't really kind of all out fight on the final zone. It was just, okay, hey, we're just going to hang out this KVK, we'll merge, and then we're good. And I say all of this to say that it kind of gets us to this point where TA, what eventually happened, right? Well, some people left TA because, one, they started realizing, hey, we're just not getting the fairest matchups. Or we're not getting matchups that we can enjoy, that we can actually go out there and fire.
Possibly,
That's not to say that everyone felt that way, but some people did. And I'm sure that was probably some people in TA and TM, because over these multiple seasons, right, they never really got an abundance of action. If you look at their KVKs, there was never just all out where everyone committed everything on both sides fighting wars. It was always kind of small skirmishes, small battles here and there, and it never really was enjoyable. I would have to say for both sides, right? For the TA and TM side, because they probably wanted more action. And then for the other sides that were going up against them, that probably just wanted the matchups to be a little bit closer in power. So that way their players would feel like, okay, we actually have somewhat of a fighting chance here. So let's go ahead and engage. Let's go ahead and use some resources and troops, etc.
Yeah, and this is what I was saying earlier, right? So it's true. It's just like as the game progresses, it's how it were. It was just sad how it were. I think in the early days, the issue were TATM created TATM. And the other alliances back then sadly gave up. A lot of the alliances and players back then gave up and made brand new accounts, brand new alliances. They prepped, did some different stuff, made new ones, right, on global launch instead. So it would have been interesting to see maybe if some of them didn't give up, what would have been the outcome? Would have been different?
And so eventually it got to a point where some of the people in those alliances left to go and join other places to hopefully try and find some better matchups. And then a remainder, the majority of them, I believe, had stayed. And so that's where you end up getting the merge going down from TATM and KNW, right, where you have NA and forgetting what their second alliance is that they made. And so this all brings me to this point of when you're constantly choosing a favorable matchup and you're not really allowing yourself to be tested, and or for a lot of people to enjoy the fights, that can breed and lead people to just leaving the alliance. Because why would they want to stay somewhere where they're not going to get a lot of action, where maybe the action is just completely one-sided to a point where, you know what, maybe it's fun in the short term because you're just raffle stopping people.
Do you know what it is? And this is the sad truth, right? Beard's fully on point here, and I agree with what he's saying. But the thing is, he's forgetting one core concept about Call of Dragons and just kind of us as humans too. We're very competitive. We want to win. You know what I mean? We always want to win. And sometimes, it's so sad to see it, you know, that people are willing just to side the right way because they know if they do this, they guarantee the win, and they'd rather guarantee the win. Because you got to remember, Call of Dragons hasn't been the best game, has it, guys? It hasn't rewarded us with enough speed ups, you know, sculptures for our heroes, artifacts, you name it, right? So it's not the greatest of games. So you can see why people really were wanting rewards. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, you know?
But in the long term, something that is too easy and that is not anything at all close to a challenge will get tiring, right? This isn't, you have to keep in mind, this isn't like two alliances that are equal in power within 500 million power of each other. Like one is 10 billion and one's 10.5 billion, and they're constantly fighting multiple seasons, and one alliance just keeps winning over the other one, right? It's not to say that they're absolutely stomping the 10 billion alliance, right? It could just be that they're edging out the wins, and that's allowing for them to get the W's each season, but the matchups are still very close to where both sides really could have won. There's a big difference between that and just taking kind of favorable matchups to where you have kind of overwhelming power and clear advantages on your side versus the other. And so this then leads me to this kind of being the Noir situation, it feels like, where some people that I've spoken to have said that it's just, and this isn't just from Noir, this is from the BXS, the EIS side, and even I would imagine the TFS side as well, where it just feels a little boring. Because on one side, right, why would EIS or BXS necessarily fight Noir straight up when there are just clear power differences? And we'll show you this too as well, right? So if we look at the, where's my thing here, right? So let's go to alliances and we'll kind of work our way all the way over here to the left. And you can see here, right at the time when we pulled the data, what, 2 weeks ago, a little less than 2 weeks ago, Noir was at 24 bill, BXS was 18.4, EIS was 16.2, TFX, right? So it's like, you know, and you have to think about it.
What's it currently though?
100 mil plus players than they do. It's just at that point, it's almost as though, okay, maybe we will fight, but if we do, maybe it's not going to be for that long, or let's just not take the fight. Because keep in mind,
yeah, the thing is, it's like, I'll give you my 2 cents on this. I think AIS has kind of done the right thing, but at the same time, I feel like they could have, you know, said, you know, we'll have a couple of skirmishes, not full out brawls, and they'll tell their members, look, we're not going out hard, don't resource you, because they could have tried to gauge and understand how strong Noir truly is, right? At the moment, all they're doing is looking at them on paper, but they're not really seeing this new Noir with all the new players that have migrated in. They're not really seeing them truly fight as one proper brand new alliance, right? Which is going to be interesting. And the thing is, EIS could have maybe found, who knows, like a chink in the armor that they could have figured out, passed it on to the allies, you know, BXS, and potentially had a game plan for the future. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go from here. But I understand why EIS hasn't attacked, to be fair. Like, you're trying to save troops, to me.
BXS and EIS could have went to the Noir side to fight those matchups, but they didn't. They opted to go to the TFS side. Why? Because the TFS matchup was a little bit more favorable for them. It didn't feel like it was maybe as overwhelming or as big. Now, obviously, that isn't necessarily going to be the case once they end up fighting it out in the level 3s or the zone 3s once the level 4 pass is open. And this obviously isn't to say that this happens in every single KVK. And it is getting a little bit better because the kingdom pools are getting larger now, right? Where we previously had 119 kingdoms going into this current SOS or Season of Strife KVK season that they would get matched and paired with for their own groups, right? When you have a lot more kingdoms in a pool, it allows for closer matchups to be made. But it still is something to keep a lookout for, is that if your alliance is just too strong, or not, I don't want to say too strong, but if it's very high powered, to me, it's almost as though you have to be so much more careful on how you go about selecting matchups, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you are depriving your players of being able to get a lot of action. And
I agree with what you're saying, but I think there's an underlying issue again with this point, unfortunately. And so I'm going to get live draw up, boys, and we're going to explain this properly. So we're gonna draw some, you know, bits and bats here on screen for everyone. So let me just make sure this is set up right. There we go, Windows 10, boom. So what we're gonna do here is draw a box first, right? I just want to kind of just draw this box here for you guys. And then what we're going to do is kind of draw a couple of lines or a couple of these little smaller boxes. You know what I mean? Let's just get a couple of colors and it'll make sense. It will make sense. Honestly, it will make sense. So the problem is what's happening is what I would call just natural. What we're seeing in Call of Dragons is what you see in any game, where up in this top section is the player base, right? So you got the player base all up here at the top, and you know there is only X amount of players, right? Because of the player base. And the problem with Call of Dragons is it has such a small player base, and to be honest, it's been shrinking. It's not been growing, which is the outcry why we've been asking the devs to listen and try to go in a different direction for the game instead of it potentially dying on us, right? What ends up happening is you've got the player base. And when you have power and as time goes on, players go through almost like a filtering system, unfortunately. So like the very first one here is basically all the newer players. So let's just draw the brand new player, right? I'm a noob. I've just played the game, right? I've only just gone through a season. You naturally hit this wall. You naturally hit it because obviously the red is going to represent all of the alliances like Noir, TFS, and so on. And what these players have to do, unfortunately, is do this. They kind of like go all the way around and work this way. So they have to kind of join a good server that's near them and power up a little bit. So then that player can then kind of push into the correct color and keep moving up this path. And the thing is, again, this is kind of just like a natural phenomenon. I'm not saying this is anything weird. You've got to think. Players are competitive. Players want to win. And the best players that want to win and spend the most obviously want to play with people like-minded. It's just natural, right? It's natural for like-minded people to want to kind of group with other like-minded individuals. The issue is Call of Dragons just doesn't have enough players. It doesn't have enough players at the moment to support this, because if it did, in theory, it wouldn't be an issue, because there could be a Noir, but then there could be a Noir 2.0. It could be called something else, right? But it'd be an alliance equally as strong, filled with the biggest spenders, but from a different section, right? And then you'd have all the other alliances at the different levels of spending, similar to like Rise of Kingdoms, how you had an Imperial Kingdom, a Seed A, a Seed B, a Seed C, and a Seed D. So it's just one of those things that has to take time, but the problem is Call of Dragons just doesn't have the player base. So let's see where we carry on with this video. It's a long video. I do apologize for you guys. It is a first raw reaction, right?
We'll see a pop, if you will, of some people leaving. Will something like that happen to Noir? Because Noir is almost on another level compared to where TA, even though it is a little similar. It's a lot similar than other situations. They're so much bigger. They're growing at such a higher rate, and they're recruiting like the top / stronger players on average to the alliance. Will they eventually see something like that happen, where there will almost be this internal frustration that maybe no one will really talk about, or maybe barely talk about, and you won't really know it until it happens? It's kind of similar with the kind of TFS situation during their split, at least on this portion.
So one thing I think he's missing here, and this is kind of important too, and if you're a community member, I think certain players will know what I'm going to say if they've been in the correct loop, right? This is kind of true with what he's saying in the current state of Call of Dragons, which is these NA teams. Basically, the current rosters, the top alliances, are kind of North American and European based teams. I'll be honest, there's a couple of Asian teams there is, but there's not that many compared to the North Americans and the Europeans. It's just overwhelming at the moment. However, that's what's been changing in the community. the game, I believe, has been granted to the Koreans and to the Asian market as a whole. And there's been more and more newer and newer super alliances and super spenders from Korea and China and all these Asian markets that have been super spending. And some of those accounts look terrifying compared to some of our normal mains. And again, are they prepping for that? Are they prepping for potentially, the the Rise of Kingdoms has the equivalent. I forgot what it's called. I think it's not 1960, but there's something 60. But there's one alliance there, super high Imperial, #1 kingdom, all Korean, right? Is there going to be another one of those? Who knows? But if there is, maybe Noir can combat him, right? Maybe Noir can combat him. So then I think he's missed that too. I think I'd love to hear some more points on it and
I remember
maybe
having a conversation
probe
with
him
Jason
about
and
it,
people there, and this is obviously public knowledge now, where they ended up doing this poll to see who was interested in staying, who would like to leave, and maybe go find other avenues. And they basically put 2 reactions on a post and ended up seeing that about half of the people, it's pretty much almost half and half, for people that were going to stay and people that were going to leave. And
interesting.
And part of it was almost shocking to me, because typically in those kinds of situations where if people are going to leave, you would almost imagine that they're not going to be so upfront and honest with just saying that, right? They sometimes will just let management know, or some people know in most cases, right? But typically aren't going to broadcast it to the entire alliance.
I think that's kind of true, maybe at a lower scale, but I couldn't imagine it on a Noir scale, because you got to think there's so much money involved on everyone's account and in that allowance in the alliance, right? That they're gonna tell you straight. They ain't gonna fuck around. This is a lot of money at stakes. If they ain't happy and gonna move, they'd rather let you guys know, because again, they understand the investment value, right? So
I then wonder what's going to happen with Noir, right? It's like, sure, it is interesting to be the top alliance, right? I very much think, almost as though it's interesting to be the top kingdom, but at the same time, there are certain hurdles and challenges that can come with that, depending on how you play those scenarios out. And I think once we get to the end of the season, it's very much going to be apparent on how decisions and actions were made, how it affected the KVK, and did the KVK turn out to be the best version of the KVK that it could have been from those early decisions, early actions, early diplomacy conversations, who we decided to union with, how things played out. And part of me wonders, will there be some self-reflection on not only who we chose to match with, but on how big we are? Because sometimes being the biggest kid on the block in a KVK, where you at least have an advantage over everyone else, as we said before, it really almost requires you to be so selfless and to be so self-aware of your own position that you have to almost think about the good of everyone that's in the alliance and not just maybe what management wants to do. It's thinking sometimes about how are we going to be able to create the most enjoyable and the most fulfilling KVK experience for all of our members, and kind of being a steward to them and really thinking about them and putting them front and center as a priority. Because I will say this, if the action does not last that long, once the level 4 pass is open and once we get to final zone, I will have no problem chalking this up as the biggest disappointment of a KVK in COD's history.
Oh, you're not wrong. The thing is, I actually feel like it's going to be like that. Is it sad? Because you got to feel, and this is where I feel like EIS has probably done a big problem here, because you haven't fought Noir, and you just got to think, yeah, you're stocking up, but you're letting the #1 spender alliance basically stock up, man. Like, I feel like it's going to be a bloodbath, I'll be honest. It's going to be an interesting fight, maybe, but I have a feeling it's going to be a quick fight. I'll be honest. I don't think it's going to be that long. I believe what I've heard on the block from certain players were Noir and TFS are going to push out EIS and BXS fast, which is what I could kind of see happening. But then I could see TFS and Noir supposed to be fighting against each other or something like that. I could be wrong, but if that is the case, that'd be entertaining to see, just, for the fight. But that just showcases how quick this fight is going to be if that's the case, right? If that's what is the plan and what's going to be going on. So we'll see. I think so far it is kind of a disappointment. I would have hoped EIS would have just got out there and fought, man. Like, you got to think, we was OKS last season. We had no activity compared to BDO. We still went out. We still showed up. We still put on a fight for everyone. Even BDO, we lost troops. We lost resources. But that's what it is, man. It's a fighting game. So
And
we're almost there,
I
guys.
feel
10
very
minutes
sorry
left. Thank you for watching.
not-
And if you've enjoyed this raw, honestly, raw commentary, smash like, comment, and subscribe, guys. I haven't said it really in this video. I've recorded this as it's gone live. So just to showcase that, it's gone live 1 hour ago. We've recorded this for you guys. And this is obviously going to be uploaded a couple of days later, just to let obviously BN get his moment of fame, because I don't want to just steal his content straight away. But I have asked the big man, and he has given us his blessing. So thank you, BN, and I hope you've enjoyed my video so far and my commentary on it.
That participated in this KVK. But I would almost argue feeling more sorry for some of the Noir players if they're not able to get their fill. Because you have to think about, people are going here as the strongest alliance, because they're probably hoping that they're going to be able to get a lot of action. Why would you migrate? Why would you keep playing in the strongest alliance if your expectation is not to fight?
Gold chest, bro. What do you mean? Bro, imagine just hypothetically somehow Noir let 2 or 3 free-to-play players join their kingdom. I'm just saying those guys would be the fastest free-to-play players to hit T5 in history. On their accounts. I'm being honest.
And it can't be just
it'd be crazy.
And so, right, and I'm talking like a day in each zone. Right? You have to.
Maybe that's it. Noir, listen, hear me out. I'll make a brand new account. Or maybe I think I've got an account in server 65 or something. Hear me out. I'll get a brand new account, 200k, throw it in Noir, and let's just see how long it takes it to hit T5 with all the gold chests. I can imagine it's ridiculously fast.
To try to get to a
the amount of VIP you're gonna have.
What I believe was single-handedly the most enjoyable, most fulfilling, most spectator-friendly match to watch, which was when TFS went up against Noir in that SB1, that Bellerin Season 1 KVK, where they fought for about 3 weeks. And,
yeah, that was a good fight, man. That was a good fight.
Fighting throughout the remainder of the season. That's what I'm talking about. Now, I have realistic expectations, so I'm not going to assume or imply that every KVK happened like that, because they didn't. But there was a few other KVKs outside of that one, the TFS Noir one and SB1, that also did have some longer lasting PvP, not as long as that. But I think, to me, that's almost what I would love for the standard to eventually be, right? Is you want to be able to fight for maybe up to a few weeks. Right? I'm talking like once you get to final zone, right? Maybe not necessarily throughout the entire season, right? For each zone, maybe you'd like to see a couple days worth at minimum of fighting. But once you get to final zone, you're almost thinking, man, we need to fight kind of all out, or at least up to something like that, where maybe over time it gets there. And so to kind of get that early just whiff, it's like that new can ball smell, right? For tennis balls. And you're just high off of the excitement, off of the enjoyment, off of what the future looks like for this matchup. And so just the whole topics are interesting to me. There's so many cool storylines. We're actually going to talk about some of these in a later video right before Zone 4 opens, or level 4 passes open for Zone 3. And then the last one I want to talk about is, why don't big alliances come out and fight? Now, this was another thing that we were having a conversation about in the COD VC, which is, why is it that some alliances like BXS weren't fighting TFS and them longer? Why didn't BXS fight Noir? Why didn't EIS fight Noir? And, it was, some people were saying, man, we just want to fight nonstop all day, every day. Why isn't management telling their people to fight and just to go out there? Like that was a factor or part of a disappointment that some people were saying. And, my response to that was that I can understand to a degree on why we would love to see as much fighting as possible, especially when the alliances and the players have troops available, have elixir available, have resources available to where they could continue to fight. However, there's kind of 2 ways of looking at this. The first is that, and we'll just use the kind of TFS BXS example.
Let him cook.
Is BXS, they ended up fighting for what? Some people said it was like 5 or 6 hours. I'll just say less than 10 hours, right, that it lasted, because I didn't hear any reports that it lasted longer than that. So we'll say the Zone 2 open, it's Frostia. They fight for less than 10 hours. TFS and AFS end up getting the W. It was very short-lived, and I'm sure was very left people wanting more, we'll say that. Now, why is it exactly that BSS and XSB stopped fighting? Is it because maybe the online time or the hour wasn't favorable for them having a lot of people on in the moment? Did they just not have a lot of people on in general leading up to the fight, even though they probably communicated and let everyone know ahead of time that, hey, this is the time where everyone needs to start getting on so we could start preparing for the matchup in Zone 2? Was it that maybe people just didn't really want to fight and go all in on a Zone 2? Would they rather go all in on a more important zone because this is a neutral? It's not really a necessary.
This is kind of interesting because he says that, and the thing is, if they have access to another zone and they're able to get the Thunder Rocks, it isn't too bad. However, if they have to fight for either zone, they should be fighting for one of them at least, because the thing is, the Thunder Rock is one of the most important behemoths on the open field. It grants everyone march speed, and it grants you the ability to get in and out, push flanks really quickly, and abuse, honestly, the Thunder Rock's AoE as well. So the Thunder Rock is quite good when it comes to a behemoth to have as an alliance behemoth tool to summon, right? So interesting.
Zone to fight over. And so did they have people that may have even been communicating or trying to advocate for, let's just not even fight, let's not even waste troops beforehand? Did they find that taking over the territory and having some of the additional RSS?
Do you know what? I would honestly, if there's a BXS member out there watching this right now, I would love you to just interview. I'd love to interview and just to hear your thoughts and explain a little bit more, an actual point of view, what's going on, why certain choices have gone so far. Because to be honest, I wouldn't even hate on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can make perfect sense why you might have gone in and fought, because at least you've gone in, you've fought for maybe 10 hours. Your alliance uptime wasn't great, and maybe you did schedule for another uptime. It wasn't met to the requirements of your standards, so you just said, guys, if you're not hitting the requirements, we're not going to do this, and just like went to the next zone, which is fair enough. But I'd love to hear their point of view, you know?
Same common advantages, maybe as it may apply to building more towers, capturing the Thunder Rocks for additional bonuses. Did they just say, hey, that's just not really that big of a thing? Maybe we just don't need that. Who knows? But what I will say is that this is how it will look to me depending on how Zone 3 plays out once the Level 4 passes. If they go all out against TFS, AFS, because that's most likely what's going to happen. It's going to be them going in here. It's going to be EIS, EIL going in here. And then it's going to be Noir trying to catch up to one of the others, right? And so if they go all in, then okay, you can sell me on, okay, this is kind of justified. We get it now, right? You wanted to save up. You want to go all in here because this is going to be more of a priority or a primary objective zone.
It really is as well, but that's the thing. I don't think a lot of people understand. Like, even though I was arguing how important the Thunder Rock is, these zones are way more important because in theory, it's your first almost opportunity to lock out your enemy without them even having access into the zone, you know?
Compared to Sophostia, which was probably more of a set.
Like, the way this could be changed is if these passes here were level 6, or, you know, if these were level 4s to go into Afrian, and this pass here was a level 5, so you swap them around. So it would mean everyone got access from zone 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, right, to get to the final zone. You could try and fight. If you got pushed out, you got pushed out, but then it allowed the enemies afterwards to invade into your zone once they clearly won Afrian, right? So
secondary,
it's interesting.
Objective at that time. It really wasn't a priority, if you will. But then the second part of this is that will this eventually become a trend? And this is going to be a question for you guys amongst any thoughts and comments you have on anything I've discussed so far, but I want to put this to you all as well. Will we start seeing a trend in some of the KVKs where alliances and or kingdoms may just opt to not fight in the neutral zones? The ones that are almost optional, if you will, because that's really what it is. So Frosty is optional.
It's too hard because it's too subjective. There's alliances out there that want to fight every single zone, and then there's other alliances out there that do kind of might just say, let's skip this zone, we'll have a little bit of a skirmish, but we're going to focus more on the end game of this season. There's different alliances, and the way people and management of an alliance approaches Call of Dragons is completely different case by case. That's what makes it so hard for, I would say, people to try and create a very good, valid opinion, and for him to kind of critique stuff like this, because everyone has their way of playing the game. no way is correct and no way in theory is wrong, right? Everyone can play the way they want to play. But that's the crux of it, right? That's the crux. It's so hard to suggest that. So
you don't have to take this to do anything. Whereas, at least in Season of Strife, once you get to Zone 3, right, you pretty much will to a degree. And I say to a degree because there is the off chance that everyone is just like, yo, we're not going to go to your area, you don't come in our area, let's just bang it all out in the final zone. Now, personally, would I rather see that happen in this matchup? Absolutely. And why do I say that? Because I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. I would rather see them hold off and wait to fight in the final zone. And that is because, one, the matchup has more opportunities to be a little bit more fair and balanced, where it can really be kind of this equal two kingdoms versus two kingdoms approach. Whereas how it's going to play out now is it's going to be EIL trying to come in and sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I wish, if there's a dev listening and maybe someone can clip this, ship it to a dev. Listen, all you guys need to do is swap the passes around. Just make this, see this 4 here? This 4 needs to be a 5. And that 5 over there near the spire needs to be a 4. If you just switch the numbers around, it would be fine. Because that would exactly work how BN wants it to work and how I think a lot of players want it to work. Because it would allow, no matter what, each alliance to have the opportunity to 1v1 each other if they choose to. And then it allows them to prepare, get ready, you know, have these little small statue skirmishes, what people don't like, but you're allowed to have these skirmishes. But then it's a 2v2 fight in Hollandale for the dragon, for the end, and whoever wins, wins. You push them out, and then it's up to the enemy, right? If they choose to keep going further, to go through the new pass, right, on pass 5. So
coming from the south,
definitely change them.
And then it's going to be Noir over here in, where are they? Over here in Atherin, right? Trying to either go over here west and catch up to BXS, or going over here and trying to catch up to EIS, starting kind of pushing them in from either side so they can try to maybe get to TFS and AFS's defense here in Akura, right? So it's kind of like this 2v1, and then it's this group trying to hold off these guys, and then it's Noir, that's probably right. So it's like this, it's just, I hope you guys get what I'm saying. I would just like to see something that is more kind of upfront and doesn't feel like it's, oh, we're fighting this 2v1, and then it's, you know, the idea almost kind of feeling like we just need to try and crush TFS and AFS as much as we can, so that way by the time the war catches up to us, it might be a little bit more balanced or fair to it. It's just like, that's kind of how it feels up front to me, at least in one way, in one POV. And so, yeah, I don't know. My like I said, my thought is I would really just like to see the action here. Now, do I think that's going to happen? Sadly, probably not. Or not a hard no. But it's something that I'm optimistic about. But it leads me to say that I wonder if that is what we'll see. Will kingdoms start to opt in certain KVK seasons to just not engage in the neutral zones?
Yeah, they might.
Not only the neutral zones, but even some of the statuaries. Will they just opt for the more important part, which is fighting in the actual zone itself once the pass is open? So you're fighting in more of a necessary zone to win, or to where you can do significant damage to your opponent. It is interesting to think, right? Because that's basically what has happened in this KVK so far, outside of, right, some small scale and small duration fighting in Sophrostia. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about this, right? Do you think Noir could end up succumbing to the kind of TA 2.0, like being kind of TA 2.0 for them? Or no, you know what, and make a TA 2.0. And then what do you think about the history? Do you think that based on the matchup they chose this season?
Well, technically, Noir is TA 2.0, if you think about it, right? TA was the first super alliance of the Bears, right? It was the super alliance that had everyone in, and everyone did technically try to ally in. It was a little bit toxic, and now Noir over global, with the migration change that's happened, has now become similar, right? It's a similar kind of identity as it, right? But I don't see it as a problem. It might be a hot take, I know, guys. It might be a hot take, but I don't see it as a problem, because the thing is, in all games, no matter what game you play, it happens, right? Even if you took, for example, football. You've got the Premier League. People are paid millions in the Premier League. But then you can go down to League 1 and League 2, League 3, League 4, right? And it's just cheaper, right? And it's the kind of the same premise here. You're going to get those Noirs. Those are the Premier League teams, guys. But a lot of the time, we like to watch League 1. We love to watch the, you know, teams that are very similar in power. There's not that too many T5s, but there is some which can cause that who is going to have the better tactics and so forth, right? So yeah, I enjoyed the video. I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed the video. It was a kind of a really good video. It took me down memory lane as well, which is really good. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this type of video. I've not done really a reaction in a very, very long time. If you want more reaction style videos, let me know. I'm happy to do them. Obviously, I need to find some good content that makes sense to me and obviously to you guys. But with that, smash like, comment, and subscribe. Video link to BN's video. Check it out. Hit the like button for him. Show him some love. And with that said, stay safe, stay sneaky, guys, and peace out.